welcome to this Partner Showcase video. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at VMware. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Holger from Akquinet. Holger, why don't you start with an introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you, Guy, for the opportunity to show something about Akquinet. So my name is Holger Böhn. I'm the Manager of IT Infrastructure at the Akquinet Outsourcing business unit.
So Akquinet's quite a large company. Let's tell me what does Akquinet do and what are some of the main services that you offer?
So Akquinet is an IT company based in Germany. We have several business units, and the main business unit is outsourcing. So we are a full-service outsourcing provider. So from the baseline, from just co-location services coming into our data center and providing power and security for the IT equipment of the customer. We have managed services, starting with infrastructure as a service, or you name it, Akquinet Cloud. And then we have managed services, operating system, database, and so on, up to services outside of the data center. So also client services we gave to our customers.
Pretty much covering all of the IT services a customer could want. So that's a great portfolio. So what are some of the main challenges then that your customers are facing and come to Akquinet Cloud for?
So the main challenges for customers is that today their management said we have to go to the cloud, and the cloud is not making everything so easy as the public situation tell us. So if you want to go to the cloud, then you need assist, you need consulting. And that's what the main challenge is, that the management says go to the cloud, and the IT administrator saying, okay, then I have to learn about the cloud. It's not just only a migration, it's much more, and the change of the mindset, the change of how do they work. And that's, taking the time they needed. And that's the main challenges today, I would say.
So new skills, new resources, new economics to consider, and how to get there, right? It's a big challenge. And of course, you guys run a VMware-based cloud, so that does help somewhat with, I would guess, about 90% of your customers' skill sets straight away. How is the partnership for you in Akquinet Cloud and VMware and your portfolio evolved over time?
So we started with VMware a long time ago. It was the baseline of our managed services. So as an outsourcing service provider, we gave services like managed operating systems. That's fine for a lot of customers. We are first generation outsourcers, so we help the customers to understand what are the difference between the company-owned IT and the service provider. And some of the customers, they will not or was not able to give every service to the outsourcing. They want to start with a baseline called infrastructure as a service. So some years ago, we started to that customers having only a vCenter and a regular VM infrastructure without self-service, or only a vCenter as a self-service. But they are missing the integration into the network and firewalling and so on. So just an old-fashioned way of administrating. You cannot call it a cloud. And some years ago, we start to improve that. We know that the customers want to administrate their network itself, their backup itself. So they are looking for an infrastructure as a service solution, which is in self-service and which is called cloud. So that's what the VMware Cloud Director helps us. The customer itself understood VMware and classical vSphere infrastructure. Now they have to learn NSXT in our environment as a network and the firewalling, and they have their possibilities to administrate their whole infrastructure as a service environment. That's how our infrastructure is growing by the generations. And yeah, the next coming up releases is object storage as a service and Kubernetes as a service and so on. So the VMware Cloud Director itself is a great platform to make infrastructure as a service as a completed service.
Yeah, so there's lots of add-ons that you can plug in for customers to realize those additional use cases, like you said, object storage or Kubernetes. And one of them particularly that we wanted to focus on today was disaster recovery as a service. And you have been using one of our plugins, Cloud Director Availability, with VMware Cloud Director. Tell me, what sort of use cases do you have with customers for disaster recovery as a service? Do you see a lot of on-premise to cloud, or are you doing between your cloud protection?
So we must differentiate in that way. So first of all, we started to use that tool to migrate a customer from their on-premise data center to the cloud. And now we are offering this as a disaster recovery solution. So it's working the same way. It's one tool. And for this tool, we are offering the disaster recovery for customers who have their own data center. So today they have on-premise IT. Maybe they want to migrate in the near future to a cloud service provider, but today they have the reason or the request to have a solution to protect their workload in the case of disaster. So that's why we offer disaster recovery as a service to them and say, okay, you have only one data center, you have only one fire protection zone and so on. You can protect your workload into a cloud. And that's not only backup as a service, because today you can also have a backup as a service or backup to the cloud and protect also your workload. But how can you start the workload if your data center is down? So the disaster recovery is more than only backup. It's a different way. It's not backup. You must differentiate that. That's of course. And a lot of people in Germany or Europe, I would say, they did not think about disaster recovery in the past. So we have enterprise customers. They have a disaster recovery. They have two data centers. They have mirroring in the storage way. They have a stretched cluster, for example, and that's how they protect their workload for two data centers. But smaller companies, they do not have two data centers. And today, that's one of another challenge. Everyone speaks about cyber criminals or how do you call it?
Ransomware, malware?
Malware protection, of course, yes. These things, and that's what you have also to protect for, because if you are infected as a company and everything is encrypted, then you are down for days, for weeks, for months. And how can you protect, how can you restart your services? That's also a way for disaster recovery. So I know in the US, they have disaster recovery because they have the East Coast and the West Coast, and they have environmental things like a blizzard or earthquakes and so on. That's what we in Europe, we say, okay, we are not so interested in it because we are in a safer zone of this. But for cyber criminals, we are not protected. So therefore, we also need disaster recovery protection or prevention.
So the key differentiators here from an Akquinet's service perspective is, as a customer, I can very easily configure with my existing on-premise IT environment replication and protection of my workloads to an Akquinet VMware cloud, where if there is a disaster and there's flooding of the data center or I'm hit by malware, I can then start up those workloads on, very quickly, because they're in the VMware format already. So there's no conversion like you'd have with a hyperscaler. And because it's disaster recovery, I can start up multiple workloads in a sequence and be up and running at a particular recovery point very, very quickly. And how does Akquinet manage then the, you mentioned before that enterprises have duplicate data centers and storage array replication, which is very expensive, but very good if you can afford it. How do you manage the economics of the target cloud when a disaster recovery situation happens?
So, first of all, the customer only has to pay for the replication and the storage he needs. And when he power on his machine, then he has to pay for it on a daily basis. Yeah. So that's very economic for the customer, because he has not to pay for all the resources. So we have a special compute resource pool, which is more over provisioned. So in the VMware, over provisioning is state of the art, but at the disaster recovery pool, we have a greater over provisioning. So for example, in the regular way, we have only an over provision of CPU from 2 to 1 or something like that. But in the resource pool for the disaster recovery, we have 10 or 20 to 1, because if some customer has a disaster, then not all customers have the same disaster on the same time. Even if you need this resource not only for disaster, also for testing purposes and so on, not all the customers are testing at the same weekend or the same day. Yeah. So that's why it's better economic, because the hardware is not only in standby mode, it's in standby mode for a lot of customers.
Yeah.
So that's how it works.
Yeah, so you're replicating to a multi-tenanted environment, which is enabling you to then push the cost down for the customer, secure, and when the workload requires it, the performance will be there. I mean, VMware does probably the best scheduling engine there is, which just allows you to over-provision these hardware resources, but make sure that the workload will run optimally.
Yeah.
And if a customer then decided, hey, I'm very happy with the Akquinet service, can I then just migrate over? Would that be a simple cut of the replication?
Yes, it is quite simple like that. You have some things to think about, because you will not have that in the resource pool of the disaster recovery. Then we will shift that workload to the regular resource pools. And as well, you have to think about the network connectivity. So if the customer has his own data center, he owns also the connectivity, the internet access or the office access with his own bandwidth in his own building. And the disaster recovery to the Akquinet data center does not request such a huge bandwidth. But if he wants to shift, maybe then he has to adjust the bandwidth to the Akquinet data center, because that's his regular data center at that moment.
Yeah, got it. So complete swing of the circuit to Akquinet.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so that's really interesting to hear, and it sounds like there's a lot of value to be obtained just from the disaster recovery as a service. But if customers wanted to understand more about what services are coming from Akquinet, you mentioned containers and object storage before. Can you provide any more information about what's coming up from Akquinet Cloud?
Yes, of course. So from the infrastructure as a service perspective, I've already told we have VM, we have the network virtualization, we have object storage extension. So a customer also can request object storage as the cheapest way to store a lot of information. and this is also fully integrated within the Cloud Director. And the new thing we are working on is the integration or the opportunity to offer Kubernetes as a service. So we try to do this with Tanzu, and Tanzu is also well known on the VMware section, but only the newest version of the Cloud Director is for us good enough to offer Tanzu not only container as a public service provider, but as well as a private hosted way. So the Kubernetes workload can be published in the private network of each customer. This integration is now generally available from you, I know. It is Cloud Director 10.3, but we only have 10.2 because we do not only have VMware products as an extension, we also have a backup extension from another vendor, and this version is not available for 10.3 Cloud Director version right now. But hopefully in the next month we will have this. We will test it in our test environment, and then we'll go to production. And in our lab, we also have already 10.3, and we are working on Kubernetes as a service. So hopefully by end of the year, we can offer Kubernetes services as a self-service in the Cloud Director with full integration.
And just want to zoom back into the object storage thing, because I think it's a useful use case, especially in the EU and in Germany. When you say you're offering object storage as a service for your customers' clouds, those multi-tenanted or private clouds that you have in your data center, we're not talking about object storage on a hyperscaler. We're talking about object storage within the Akquinet cloud. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct. So a lot of our customers, we are in the health sector and the public sector, they are not willing to go into a public cloud service provider. Maybe it's not allowed for them today. Yeah. So they are looking for a German service provider with a secure German data center and so on. And so therefore we have an own object storage within our data centers. It's the Cloudian, it's one of the first object storage which is supported by the Cloud Director object storage extension. So that's working fine, and we have connected them, we have integrated them, so the customer has the opportunity to have self-service creation of buckets and objects in an object storage.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's a great use case. And I just want to rewind once more just to the disaster recovery as a service scenario. So where we had a customer that maybe has migrated to Akquinet Cloud, can they now protect their workloads between Akquinet data centers using the same solution?
They can do so, yes, of course, but often they are not doing this because the Akquinet Cloud is distributed over 2 data centers, and we have, for example, 2 single-site clusters in one in each data center, so they can distribute their workload over 2 data centers. That's what I told before. And the enterprise customers, they can do it on their own, but the smaller customers, they can do it now within the data center of Akquinet. And again, if they only think about physical disasters, the environmental things, then they do not think they need the disaster recovery. The disaster recovery will also help for cyber criminals. So that's why we want to offer them the ability to protect the workload also with the disaster recovery.
Yeah.
But that's also an economic thing. That first we say our customers, hey, we are secure, we have a best secure data center, and we have a backup solution. So there's not so much the reason to protect their workload when they are in the Akquinet Cloud. But for all the customers who are not in the Akquinet Cloud, that's what we are addressing. Small and medium customers, 30 to 50 or 100 VMs, they can protect their productive workload coming into the Akquinet data center, and then when their infrastructure is becoming older and older, then they can switch to the Akquinet cloud in the productive.
Yeah, nice, easy solution. Okay, so just to finish up then, Holger, if you were to kind of sum up why customers would work with you, what would you say that Akquinet Cloud's kind of unique value proposition is for your customers?
I would say we are a partner. We are not only a public cloud service provider. We are talking with our customers. And again, for example, for the disaster recovery, we are not only providing the solution, we are talking with the customer. So let's talk about 1 minute more about the disaster recovery. Only to have the VM data in our data center is not enough. You need the network concept, you need firewalling and so on. When you want to switch, then also the whole network stack must work. And that's what customers are not able to do it on their own. So we are consulting company. We also go to the customer, we talk with him and make a concept which is perfectly for the individual customer.
Yeah, you're absolutely right to point out that, I think it's a useful point to take for every customer that replicating a VM is quite the easy part of disaster recovery. The whole continuity plan, which is consulting and talking about the other aspects that need to be working so you can reach the VM, is a big task. Okay, Holger, thank you so much for explaining today what Akquinet does and your disaster recovery as a service offering. How can customers get in touch and find out more about Akquinet?
So guys, first of all, thank you also for this great opportunity today. The customer wants to reach us, they can go to our webpage. It is cloud.akquinet.com. So easy.
Brilliant,
Akquinet,
I like it.
Acquisition network, so please spell it correct and then it's working.
Thank you very much, Holger.
Thank you too.